to end up is we're really going to talk about, I'm going to ask him, what does hip hop mean? And after you answer that question, I want you also to tell me a little bit about you, because I met you at our first Evolution of Hip Hop Festival.
Yeah.
It was the first
back.
one,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. That was dope. That was a dope experience. I met a few people, a few artists that I'm still cool with now at that event. So yeah, that was very dope. Congrats to Yvette for always holding it down for hip hop, especially around here. It's really dope. It's really dope, for real.
You guys are dope, and I do it. Now, I wouldn't say, I'll be honest, not the wholeheartedly of the love of the music. I love the music, but I do it because I saw that there was a gap. You know, why didn't we have a hip hop festival in Somerville? I lived here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so shout out to Somerville Arts Council for believing in us, Nina and Greg for helping us make that happen. And here we are, getting ready to roll into number 5 on September 7th.
5. Woo.
Right?
Keep it going. The marathon continues, of course.
Right?
Yes, yes.
So let's start this off. What does hip hop mean to you?
Hip hop means to me the 5 elements, of course: DJing, breaking, MCing. I'm blanking out on the rest of them.
DJ, MCing, breakdancing, Mike,
MC, yeah.
MC, right? And Jono, if you're out there. But yeah, DJ, graffiti.
Graffiti, yeah. Just all those elements, and just like the general expression of self and what you know, like hip is to me like the knowledge base, whatever you come with, like your wisdom and experiences and knowledge, and then hop is the movement of like how you mobilize people with those words and wisdom and knowledge. So like hip hop to me is like a many genres and like different types of sounds and expressions, just keeping it at the core of those 5 elements and, you know what I mean, the hip and the hop. I feel like it's just so broad, and open to a wide array of cultures, specifically like, you know what I mean, America, and just like marginalized people, just from the inception of hip hop and where it came from, you know what I mean, poor, impoverished, like black and brown folks trying to just make it in a world that didn't want them to make it. So they made it themselves, and the world took to it. And we could see now the effect that hip hop really had on people, with the passing of people like Nipsey Hussle and the type of man he was and what he did and the trials and tribulations he overcame to show us that, hip hop is really something that could be a positive force, especially nowadays where we feel like, well, a lot of people feel like hip hop has been something that's degenerated. And I'd like to think it's not totally that, And, of course, in every sector of life, we have things that aren't really promoting our betterment. So, I mean, the duality of it is going to be the good with the bad, and the bad with the good.
So I've never heard it explained where where someone takes the hip and provides the definition, and the hop and provides the definition. I have heard a young lady from the Harvard Hip Hop Archive who puts hip hop together and says it should be one word.
Well, I only say that because it helps me just for my own brain, like get a grasp on the core of what hip hop is and what it should be for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because my philosophy is just trying to leave a positive carbon footprint on the world before I pass, or before I transition, just to let people know that, there's better options out there. There's more to life than your troubles and your trials, You can triumph over them. I feel like a lot of hip hop artists and musicians have done that for me when I've been through situations that, might have been dark and might have shown me that light, or I might have been riding high on this like super positive, happy mode, forgetting and neglecting the negative parts of life that help shine the light on the darkness. So I've learned a lot through hip hop, and I feel like now as an artist, I want to give that back and try to contribute in the same way that all these artists that I admire and respect have contributed to my just artistry and just life in general, teaching me a lot of like key life lessons, you know, and with even with the hip hop, that the intelligence and the movement, I learned that from Ab Soul, who's a part of Kendrick Lamar's TDE camp, and he said it in one of his raps that hip is the intelligence, hop is the movement. And I was like, wow, that's brilliant, you know. I just thought that was a brilliant way of just putting it together like that, because I've learned so much through hip hop. So yeah, it definitely like holds a special place in my life and my heart, and I just want to be able to contribute to it the same way all those people have contributed to my life and all the people around me's lives. You know, I built a lot of friendships and relationships through hip hop and music in general, but mostly hip hop. Like all my core and solid relationships have stemmed around those things, and I'm just like, just now in my adulthood starting to realize how important it is to our community and just to people in general.
You are, I'm sure, when you're born and you're listening to hip hop. I mean, for me, I'm listening to R&B, and then all of a sudden hip hop comes. You know, I grew with that. But when you're born with hip hop, right? So as you're listening to this music, I mean, with families and friends, what other kind of music did you listen to growing up?
Well, I listened to, like my mom and dad were very religious, so there would be a lot of gospel playing in the household, you know, especially being of Haitian descent. There was a lot of Haitian compa and gospel being played, and when I could, we'd listen to hip hop and other genres, and there was a lot of pop in the 90s, so like I would listen to a lot of pop just because it was everywhere. It was unescapable and very catchy, so yeah, it was like pop and just like random alternative rock songs that my aunt would play on Magic sometimes, and it kind of gave me that feel for like Phil Collins and like Eric Clapton's of the sort, so I started gravitating towards that on my own, like just liking the guitar chords and just liking the words that they were saying and the vocal like ranges and whatnot. That was dope to me, and yeah, so it wasn't just solely hip hop. It was which it makes sense of why like sometimes the songs that I create aren't like, they might have different elements to it, you know, like melodic elements to it and stuff.
So when you add the type of components to your music, does it really change it from being hip-hop music to another style?
Well, for me, not really, because I feel like hip-hop is just a culmination of all these genres and expressed into, you know, those 5 elements, you know, breaking, MCing, you know, DJing, graffiti. And so like, yeah, like a lot of things can be considered hip-hop in my opinion.
So when we look at some of the trap music, the mumble music, all of those, do you feel that that's hip hop?
I do, because one, these artists are coming from a place where they're just trying to express their perspective and what they know, you know. It might not be whoever's listening to its cup of tea, but it is, I feel a lot of the times that the artists are coming from authentic, genuine places. Or I'd like to believe that, you know. But yeah, like I feel like a lot of it, if it does center around those core elements and it gives you some type of insight or wisdom or knowledge into what the artists have been through or what's going on in the area that they're talking about, yeah, I definitely think it would still be hip hop, you know. I think other people who don't understand where a lot of these artists are coming from might cast it off and say that it's not hip hop, but who are we to judge on their experiences, you know?
Right, exactly. Exactly. You know, who are we to judge what their internal feelings are about, right? And why would we exclude? No one just started doing trap music without being exposed to the hip hop music. Just like some of us have been exposed to the blues, the gospel, the country music. I mean, look at Lil Nas.
Lil Nas X, yeah.
Nas X with Billy Ray Cyrus, you know.
Right.
Everybody's excited about country and western, and people are allowed to be excited about it, you know. So now, when we talk about hip hop here, and then we talk about how the different components come out of hip hop. And now we're merging to a whole different flavor, right? That still is hip hop.
Right.
What do you think about the relationships of the OGs? What are your expectations for those individuals that are true OGs? And what would you like to see them do?
Well, I guess it's about passing the torch to some degree, bestowing upon the young artists coming up who are trying to, make their own footprint and carve their own lane in the game, and giving them the little nuances and tidbits that would help, that would save them, or give them proper like preparation for what's to come if they do enter the industry or do reach a platform to where they get to an iconic or legendary OG status, just so the culture stays, fresh and innovative and positive and progressive and constructive. Really putting those keys down for the artists that want to really make a change with their music, and how to do that, how to circumnavigate the industry, because it can get very sharky sometimes in certain in aspects. So just giving them either like the back end business of what's going on with the music, or just like performance, or just even just publicity, and just know how to relate, or just express yourself in a way where it's not damaging to the artist. Because as an artist, there's a ton of emotions and life experiences that you kind of relive and have to tap into when you're creating. So I'd like to see the OGs help guide those young artists who might be going through those tough times, so they can see the end of the tunnel, instead of spiraling into a lot of like the hip hop artists recently that have passed over just like nonsensical things, whether it's violence or drug abuse, or just low self-esteem that just breaks them down, or just economic turmoil where they go broke, just spending their money frivolously and not having real financial literacy on what to do with when you do get show money, or when you do start getting records that are played on the radio, and how you retrieve those royalties and publishing dollars. I think a lot of people withhold that information for whichever reason, whatever it's a lack of security in the game, or just not being forgotten, because somebody might be better than you. So I'd like for OGs to really pass the torch and put their best foot forward in making sure that the younger generations coming up could be just as good or even better than them. So it just keeps everything building and evolving in a very healthy way.
If you were going to a panel discussion and you had a chance to, it was a panel discussion where there was about 4 or 5 OGs there, male and female. What are the top 3 things that you would want them to talk about? And when there's also the talk, but what kind of solutions would you like to hear them say that they're going to act on?
Giving artists more independence and control of their revenues and their income, giving them more back-end business tips and practices that could help them expand their brands and artistry and music.
Do you think there should be a cost to that? Everybody is trying to make that buck, right?
Yeah. It's tough sometimes. I think it depends on like the relationship that you foster. But I mean, if you do have a price that you want to set, knowledge is power, and nothing's free. So I guess if you're solving some type of issue, you should get compensated for it. And if those OGs feel like, or those predecessors feel like they need to be compensated for passing the torch, then I guess we could work something out where they do get compensated for it, because they are the elders of the genre or the industry that are providing a service for us, But I know, but at the other hand of things, it's like a grandmother. Like, do you pay your grandmother for the wisdom and stuff that she bestows upon you?
Exactly.
You know, but she does it for the family, for the culture, you know. I feel like that should be just a given. It should be just second nature.
Yeah.
You know, and if they do want to get compensated, they should set up an infrastructure so that artists do have that resource and access to them, to where they're not feeling intimidated by, you know, intimidated to reach out and try to figure out, like, yo, how do I do this, Dr. Dre or Snoop Dogg, you know, like something to where we could really just connect and tap in, and they can really feel like they're being appreciated and compensated, and we could feel like we're getting a good good knowledge base, and just like practice on what to do and how to navigate this industry.
Do you have somebody that you would consider as an OG from Massachusetts?
An OG from
Besides
Massachusetts.
Ed OG. I mean,
Um,
I don't even know if you were going to say him, but.
I wasn't, but I know, and I've heard of Ed OG, and I guess he would be one of those type of people. I don't know, like, I think like the Gurus, and like, who else? Maybe even the Benzinos, you know, like, but I don't, like me particularly personally, I don't look up, not to say I don't respect or admire some of the moves and the contributions they gave in the game. Just me personally, I haven't really followed their careers and the moves that they've made, because hip hop in Boston hasn't really been given a platform like that for, like.
Why not? Right?
Right. And it's, I think it goes along the lines of just like how we're portrayed in like media and on like a world stage. Like, a lot of people don't think that there is even like black folks in Boston, you know, so.
Okay, so let's do a time check. What is that? It's 19 after?
Yes.
Now, what time?
I think I think they're calling me.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and check your phone and see if they are, is that them?
Yeah.
They're in there?
I got a missed call.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to, I'll let you go. But I want to thank you for stopping by. We didn't get to talk about, you know, the whole effect of music and how it changes and the trends and the whole. I don't want to talk about violence within hip hop, but I'm just thinking about that incident that happened with Don Tragg down in Lawrence, and does that ties to how people perceive Boston. And I just wish I could create a platform where we could have a whole bunch of hip hop shows, but it's so sad that venues, as soon as you hear hip hop, they're like, oh no.
Kind of scare away.
Yeah. Is it justified?
I don't think it's justified, but I definitely understand where it could come from.
Okay.
You know, just because of the perception that's being pushed out there.
Okay.
Just like you said, like, it makes us look like we're like hostile and we can't hold any hip hop events, which I think is very not like untrue, because I've been to plenty of hip hop events in Boston that have gone off without a hitch.
Yes.
Not get that publicity and that platform to like showcase that, yo, we can do this. We can really make some good, like, fun events and enjoyable ones.
Well, I hope you do come back, because, as I said earlier, you were with us from our, you know, the beginning of our hip hop festivals, right? I remember the pictures, and so thank you. And
always a pleasure.
Got to have you coming back.
Yes.
So we'll go ahead and I'm gonna play one of Junior Rodigan's videos here.
Nice.
And I will be right back.
Peace.
Okay. The mic is. I know. That's what I was like. Oh my gosh.
Sound the alarm, 'cause the rebels them on. Sound the alarm, 'cause the rebels them. Sound the alarm, cause the rebels them on. Man, I seek the truth, and man, I leak the truth. Sound the alarm, cause the rebels them on. That dangerous to them, fear the boss. Come on, I seek the truth, and man, I leak the truth, and man, I speak the truth. The beast them love to see we stagnant and paralyzed. The movement are grow, see them a get paranoid. Them want to see I man go down, them can't stop the rise. See them afraid, new millennium warriors ready to make a step. Step, 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 step. Ready to make a step. Step, 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 step.
Sergio, Miss Wong, Diane Wong.
So when I make a militant step, then we not take that a damn check from the beast them. Every rebel with them hold down in a compound, every lyrics in my chat I release them. I is not a fool, I be tool, I use, and my beat fire and I beat them. On the tools of the word, power sound, verb and the note, lyrics man I use and defeat them. Ancestral voices attack to the roots them. Babylon chains, I lose them. Different style to the roots, I come to kill, for grab and confuse them. On the battlefield, man, I infantry. On the war from infancy. Ready for attack them now, cause see what them want to see. Them love to see we stagnant and paralyzed. The movement are go see them a get paranoid. Them want to see I man go down, them can't stop the rise. See them afraid, new millennium warriors ready to make a step. Step, 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 step. Ready to make a step. Step, 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 step.
Okay.
Step, 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 step. Ready to make a step.
This is
I be studying resistance, lyrical expanse from a distance. Man, I beat it and with a response. Critical war, critical bars. Babylon falling, it full of failures and flaws. The most high me follow, not Babylon lost. Me say me not follow them, cause Babylon lost. Sound the alarm, cause the rebels them armed and dangerous to them, fear the boss. Come on, I seek the truth, and man, I leak the truth, and man, I speak the truth. Liberation chant it, I lead the youth for try seek the root and give a real salute to the real rebels where I burn down them capitalist economic system. And to never ever cease from resisting. From the west to the continent, we not forget. Some man I got hard when we slip. We stagnant and paralyzed. The movement are go see them a get paranoid. Them want to see I man go down, them can't stop the rise. See them afraid, new millennium warriors ready to make a step. Step, 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 step. Ready to make a step.
Yeah.
Step, 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 step. Ready to make a step. So me say, oh, oh, step on man, I step on them, and I chant them down. No more shall we coexist with them.
So that's what's
and I
on.
declaring war on the parasites who feed upon our ignorance, and the colonial forces fighting the militants. See the troglodytes that try stop evolution. Change is inevitable, Babylon must lose, man, a step. A step, man, a step. Not on your son, man, I move up on a step. The rebel nation a step. Man, a step for freedom. And I find we own a means of production. Not slave for no man. The freedom man a step.
So which camera is making that?
Green Lion, King Master, the musical Obia man.
Camera 2 is right here in the middle. Which camera is making what?
That we're looking at right there. Is that camera
This one
two?
right here? Yes, ma'am. It's camera 2,
Yeah.
right here.
Oh, I see. They're all different. So which is number one? Is that I see the number.
Right, so this is preview, so I would press preview, and that's camera 1. This is camera 2. This is camera 3. And all I have to do if I want to make the preview program is I hit this menu button.
Now, do we talk in a regular voice or what kind of?
You see this movement over here? this is going to be our levels that tells us.
Okay. You want it to get up in the red. You want it to stay down in the...
This is the audio of this.
Okay.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that so we're getting ready to go over. Let's have this one. As soon as it hits over, I will flip the camera.
All right. What are we looking at?
I'm looking at
Until
the
what
printing.
flips over?
So the end of that show's
Oh,
going to
when
happen.
okay.
I'm going to press pause. I'm going to pause it. And now I'm getting ready to flip the camera. And then I'm going to say, welcome back to What's the Word Radio and Our View. And we have a new special guest with us, Miss Diane Wong.
Hi. Hi, it's Diane Wong. I'm here. I'm the special guest tonight.
Yes, Diane is our special guest, but we may have about 20, 35 minutes, but I want to make sure that we start our discussion about Diane's upcoming symposium, her second symposium, and it's titled Let's Talk About Race. So I would like for you just to feel comfortable to maybe talk about what the first one was about that we held here at Somerville Media Center and what you plan on achieving with your second symposium.
Okay. Well, the two symposia fit within an imagined 8 set series of eight symposia and actually individual panel discussions. And so the first one kind of set the stage, and the first one went along with what we being me, Diane Wong, and my co-host, Farrell Saunders, have done over this past year and a half. We introduced the topic of Let's Talk About Race. And we did that because we need to talk about race in this country, all over the world, but let's start with this country. So we have a desire to basically heal the human family. But, and talking about race that's an engagement of the topic of race. We're getting started just talking about it. And what I have found, not a surprise, is that people are so unconditioned, unused to talking about race that when you start to talk about it, it comes out a little slow. So I always ask people on my show, and now this is all the background to get up to the symposium, I always ask people on my show to self-identify, because the idea when we started was we'll get people to talk about race from any perspective. So this isn't a gotcha show. I'm not trying to get people on and embarrass anybody. I'm getting people to come on, and some people know a lot about race. Some people, black and white, and mainly black and white. Black people, white people, we talk about race. The ones who talk about race. The white people who don't talk about race still talk about race, but they tend to, not all, but a lot of them, tend to talk about it in coded ways or amongst safe groups. So what we're trying to do is to talk about race. So in the course of this year and a half of talking about race, we started to think about what's really going on with race and what's the most important thing that we need to bring up. Of course, that tends to be white supremacy. So white supremacy, the overview underlying the catalyst upon which all of these systems, political, educational, health, all financial, all the systems that we have sit on and are understood by, even though it's not a conscious understanding, but they're all driven by white supremacy, because white supremacy is something that's old, and it was put in place, and it's intentional. Farrell will talk about that at the symposium, but white supremacy, it never has gone away, and it isn't going anywhere unless we start to engage it. And so one of the things that I've wanted to do is to bring it up out of being out of the invisible. It's invisible because we don't think we live in a white supremacist society. And by white supremacy, in this circumstance, I'm not talking about the supremacist groups that go out and do violent acts. We're not talking about the Ku Klux Klan and all the white supremacists. We're not talking about Charlottesville and Christchurch. Those are acts of white supremacy, but those are by white supremacist groups. We're talking about the underlying, seeps into everything that we do and know, white supremacy. It just is. So we decided to do a symposium. The first one was in January, and that symposium was titled, wait for it, okay, White Supremacy, Where Are We? So we had panelists come on and talk about, from their own perspective, largely these were people of color on the younger scale. That means anywhere up to about 50. So they were on the younger end of things, and they talked about, most of them were black, not all of them, but they talked about being black within the context of a culture. So black people not tend, I mean, this is a part of the diaspora, and this is part of the triangle trade. And so black people left Africa and ended up in different places. But all these black people left Africa, so the roots are African, and they may have some culture, other culture added in. If you're African American, you have that African American history and culture and tradition, slavery, post-slavery. If you are from Barbados, then you have that kind of culture. If you're from Jamaica, but all of these are black people that were pulled and taken away and stolen and used their labor for hundreds of years. These are African ancestor people. So the important reason, and so my symposia will evolved into affinity groups. So after the first one, which is Where Are We? Then we started to look at, okay, where do we go from here? And it became clear to me that it would be really useful to have people work with, talk in, discuss things within the context of affinity groups. So what affinity groups? White males, white females, black females. Now that isn't the sum total of all the types of affinity groups one might have, but when I look at the history of race in this country, clearly the white supremacy was something that was started by Europeans. I mean, this is a white people's invention. They created something that works for them. And then the group that has had the most harsh treatment within white supremacy and within clearly the African American and actually the whole diaspora is black people. So yes, there are, when you talk diversity, that's bigger. You may have, then we're talking about black people and Asians and Latinos, but Latinos can be black people. I don't have a problem with Asians being black people if they self-identify as black people. So, but in 1964, when we did the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and anybody that's as old as I am, they all remember this like it was yesterday. And so what happened there, it was the aftermath of the Civil Rights Movement. And if you watch Eyes on the Prize, you'll see that that was largely a black movement. It was black children who were facing these vicious racists, and it was black children who were taken into jails. And the parents had to send the children because they wanted to keep their jobs. Largely, this started off in the South, moved up right on up in here into Boston, the civil rights movement. But in order to make these like affirmative action, something that was supposed to help to make the ground more even, to make affirmative action palatable to white people, they included, they being the powers that were be at that time, they included others. They included Asians. Clearly Asians have had issues in this country. I'm not saying Asians haven't had issues in this country. Slightly different issues from the issues that black people have. And the reason I want to keep it in my symposia to black and white is that I see Asians as having made a lot of progress and have moved along quite a bit from the days of the Exclusion Act that was, in the 60s before that was repealed. But since the 60s have made, the mainstream, the kind of the Chinese, the Japanese, now the Southeast Asians are still having a lot of issues and a lot of problems. But I see the Asians look much more like immigrant groups that the United States is used to. The Italians, the Irish, and so you can throw the Chinese, you can put them in the Japanese, and we fought a war with them. And yet they are making huge progress economically, financially. Asians are able to live all over with less problem. But who do we still not see getting treated like an American after centuries, generations of living in this country? Black people, African Americans in particular, are really poorly treated. And anybody out there that hears this, you all know that's true. You know that's true. You can deny it, doesn't matter. So what I want to do is I want to look at we're going to look at black people, and we're going to look at how do we get black people up and away and out of the morass of continual, always oppression in this country. And one way we're going to do that, we're going to talk about it. What South Africa did was they had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. People got a chance to talk about it, and then healing, they're not perfect, clearly, but they had a chance to start to heal inside. We have not had that. So, and the hearts and minds that didn't get affected by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 are still poisoned. So we still got racism all the way up to my eyeballs in this country. And so how are we going to work on that? And what I'm doing is we're working on within affinity groups. So this Saturday, June the 8th, from 11 until 1:30, here at the Somerville Media Center, we're doing the second symposium out of the 6 or 8, and it is white males. White males, because all of these white males came to the last symposium, and they've all been on my show. And so organically, it became clear that this was the affinity group. An affinity group because we want to hear from groups of white males who have been successfully working on racial justice for many years. So we bring them together, and then they're not competing with anybody. They talk about how they did it. And then we're going to do the same thing with black males. And there are entirely different approaches when you talk to black males. Sometimes the black males I know have entirely different approaches. Or maybe we'll find out over the course of these affinity groups that there are a lot of things in common. So we're going to give opportunities within these affinity groups for people to talk about what they are able to do, so that when white males Saturday are listening to this show, they'll be able to say, wow, they were able to do that. They're white, I'm white. I can do it too. And that's the value of an affinity group. Then once we've got all the affinity groups coming up with how they approach eliminating white supremacy, that's our goal. How do we eliminate white supremacy? So after that, then we ask the question, okay, now how do we work together? I mean, what kinds of things are important when you have white males, white females, black females? And we're going to talk honestly. We're going to say, this has been my experience, this is what I find. And so through the course of this, we're going to figure out, at least within this small group, on this grassroots level, this is how we can work together to begin to engage and eliminate white supremacy. So that's what we're doing.
I applaud you for doing this because it's definitely needed. It's definitely needed in a community like Somerville.
Are we still on?
Yes. That's okay.
Yes. Okay, hi.
Yes.
I was going to drink. Go ahead. So, sorry.
Well, I can make it so that you can drink if you.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay.
I'm fine.
So definitely needed in a place like Somerville that is very diverse, but yet you do see individuals that are being held back based on their race, their beliefs. You spoke about a lot of history, and I want to know, what was the driving force for you to start the radio show? Did something just happen? Was it our new president in office? What was it that you said, and I'm sure you've stepped up before, but this time, what was that thing that made you step up again and say, we're going to do this, and you brought your grandson along?
It's time. It's just absolutely time. It was also organic. I like for things to happen organically. So that I didn't start thinking about this yesterday or even last year. Right. This has been on my mind. Race has been, I come from a multiracial family. So there was a lot of race stuff going on all the time within my family. So, and I think black people, I grew up in the black community. So in my thinking, race really isn't, if you really break it down, it's not all that significant. It's just what we make out of it. But culture is totally significant. So I grew up within the black community, within black culture, but still in this kind of these multiracial strands of that. And I saw a lot of things within my own family that I didn't like. I saw a lot of black, and so the idea that black people can't be racist, maybe it's a different word. I don't know, we'll pick a different word. But that is not, black people we can be as racial or something toward one another, and why would we be surprised about that? Where do we grow up? We grow up looking at the same magazines, watching the same television, going to the same schools, more or less. And so by osmosis, we drink the same water, we see the same images of beauty, and so we believe that too. I mean, we have to fight hard to get out of having white supremacy as our modus operandi. So, and we struggle with that, and so then that can cause a lot of trauma just by itself. I did a program just before this, and the program involved hair, black women, and it was a particular incident of racism in Boston with a beauty salon and a black woman who took her 15-year-old daughter to a beauty salon and was chased out of there, run out of there, harassed. So there are, so it's a daily thing that we're dealing with all the time. And as a child, I grew up seeing all kinds of situations and incidents. I have people in my family that were passing. They didn't pass, and that's why I know what I mean, what I say when I mean we're going to deal with black issues. We're not going to deal with all. My family members, I have some Chinese family members, and my family members, one of them, my father's brother, married also a black, very light-skinned black woman. He was a very Chinese-looking, mixed-race man, and so they moved their before they had 5 children, but they moved away from the black community and out of our lives completely. I don't know them at all. I've got 5 first cousins, and I'm sure they know that they have black family, but now they're escaped. So what that means is that the woman was a very light-skinned black woman. She just passed as white. But the Chinese man, he didn't pass as white. He just passed as not black. Mm-hmm. So who is he? He's not black. Mm-hmm. So that's, and there's so much of this within the black community. So there's a lot of work that we all have to do. So I grew up with that. And then I went to law school intending to deal with all of this stuff. It was much harder than I thought it was going to be. And so finally I'm living in Somerville, and a friend of mine, by this time I put race on the back burner because I said, I am burnt out, I am tired, I can't deal with this anymore. And so a friend of mine invited me to the Somerville Media Center orientation, just to come to the orientation. And I said, okay, why not? I'll go to the orientation. So I came to the orientation, we went through an hour, and then at the end of that time it was Erica. Mm-hmm. And she said, okay, now you can have a radio show. And I said, okay, I want one. And so we got the date, there was time available. That's why I said why am I doing this now? It's organic. The universe called me out of retirement. I retired from, from the pressures of being slapped down a lot with dealing with trying to work in and do something in black issues. It hasn't been easy, but so what? It's not easy. Life doesn't have to be easy. In fact, it can be very stimulating, not being easy. So I decided to do a program. She said, what do you want to call your show? And I said, let's talk about race. And we set a date. I came in for orientation. It was very hard. It took me 6 months just to be able to get to do the board and be able to call up the music and figure that out. This is hard work, all of this. So I really applaud you. Yvette is just so good. So she really, on my last symposium, she just came through. She was the technical director. And so when you go and you find that symposium from January, and you see the music is there and the credits come up and you see all of that, that's all Yvette. I wasn't prepared. I didn't know any of that. So, so here we are now going into the second one. And we've got 4 white males between the ages of 68 and 78. And they've got 40, 50 years of racial justice experience. And so, that's what I mean. The universe put them all together to come on this show. And now we're going to demonstrate. I know that there are white men out there in all across the nation. They used to be in the Students for Democratic Society. They used to be the weathermen. They were skilled. They knew how to make change and make difference. So I want them to see this. I want them to come out of retirement wherever they are to the grassroots and bring their skills and work on white supremacy. They can do it. They have the skills. We're going to show exactly what white males, older white males, are able to do. And young white males watching this will be able to learn something. And white people in general will learn that there are white males who can talk about race and could say race and can say white and can say black. And another reason this came as affinity groups, and we were having a discussion a couple of months ago, And I already knew this, and Yvette knows this too, and we see this on Facebook and other places, but black people are saying, don't ask me. What are we going to do about it? I don't know. I didn't create it. It's not my thing. This is your thing. White people, you created this thing. You figure it out. And so that's a legitimate thing. So it's clear that white males and their opportunities to be in particular places can do certain things, and maybe it's their job to work on white supremacy. White females, it's your job too. You have to work on white supremacy. So hopefully you're going to come, white females, and black males and black females, to some of these symposia, so we can meet and I can get you on my show. And on the next week, on my show, Let's Talk About Race, 7 to 8 o'clock, we've got Debbie Irving is coming on. She's the author of Waking Up White. So she's going to come on, and she may be able to be on the panel. We're sort of projecting that panel for September. So white women, get it together, and let's talk about race.
Yeah, white women.
That's a hard one. They're hard.
And you hit on an interesting point when you said people come to, and let me do this for you real quick. Go ahead. People come to you and come to black people. Go ahead, have some.
Okay, thank you.
People come to black people and say, I don't know about race. Talk to me a little bit about it. And sometimes, yes, you are uncomfortable, but some people want to educate others about that. And
I'm doing it. You're doing it.
I know you are. I know you are. And my children did it for me, as I told you last week. You know, my kids did it for me because I didn't grow up, as Farrell asked me last week, what culture did you grow up in? And that made me think. And I said, I grew up in a Turkish culture, a Japanese culture. I did not spend a lot of time in the black culture because I was in the States and then back out again. So when he asked me that question, and as I thought about it over the next few days, then I had a better understanding of when somebody asked me, where am I from? What kind of response can I give? I had a better understanding of that. It's just not that individual, where did I enter this world? Where was I born? Where are my people from? It's what environment were you raised in? And that is key. And so many times people judge us on our looks, but you have no clue of how we were raised.
And how people are raised, the people around them, the food that you eat, the environment, the things you see. If you see temples and you see little rivers and you can be black. Mm-hmm. And you see those things, and maybe you're in Japan and you maybe grew up there. And so that becomes the culture. That's what you resonate with, because that's who you are. And I remember I used to work in higher ed, and I was at the University of Oregon, and I was working with students, and there was a young woman, to look at her, she looked Asian black, because she was her mother was from Thailand. Mm-hmm. And her father was black. But she was adopted, and she lived in Oregon, in the mountains of Oregon, in a small community of Polish people. And so when she came to the University of Oregon, this was the first time she'd ever been around any black people. And so, but when people saw her, she was a brown-skinned woman, they looked at her as a black woman, but here's somebody who doesn't have a clue. Mm-hmm. So she was very confused for a long time. And so but it was the food she ate was Polish. The community she was from was Polish. And it was an all-white community. So for all purposes, this is a white woman, Polish young woman, but we see her as a black woman, and so that starts to shape how she starts to be confused and then tries to find out who she is. But that's an imposition to put on people. Because why do we tell people that because we think that you're black, you should be, why don't you do some black things?
That is true, and I'm so sorry that we're about to run out of time, but you'll have to come back on the show. But I want to tell people where you should be this Saturday. You should be at Somerville Media Center, 90 Union Square, to join the Let's Talk About Race Symposium,
Yeah.
because it's the one, and join in, and you can be involved. And then you'll meet Diane Farrell, and then maybe you'll get invited on the show.
You'll be invited. If you want to come on the show, just come and talk to me, and we'll have you on the show. And then if you want to do more, you can do more. So come and get involved. We're going to eliminate white supremacy. You want to be part of that.
You want to be part. Join us this
Thank you.
Saturday. And join Farrell and Diane on Let's Talk About Race every Thursday evening from 7 to 8
7 to
p.m.
8.
on Boston Free Radio. You can log into Boston Free Radio and listen from your mobile device. You can sit at home, listen on the computer. You also go Facebook Live.
I'm on Facebook Live, and if you miss the show for some unknown reason, you can pick it up as a podcast. I create the podcast after the show. You can find that at probably www.soundcloud.com/ Healing with Diane.
We didn't even get to that other part, but we'll put that address up there for you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.